Hi, folks. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another special live stream where I'm going to be talking about, and I hope with a lot of you, the Disney Plus Anthology 2025, The Beatles. And hopefully, we're going to get some interesting discussion in that. I wanted to do a live stream. It's a popular topic right now. Thanksgiving weekend we have. So hopefully a lot of people are going to be enjoying it and talking about it. And maybe some people have things they disapprove of. I know they do because in the comments, I've done 3 videos on this. And, here we go. We'll see. A lot of people, not everybody was happy about it. Before I begin here, I know we don't have everybody present yet here, but I want to say a couple of things. First, this day, November 29th, we lost George Harrison 24 years ago, 2001. So let's remember George. 24 years, he's been gone. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. I see some people in the comments have already acknowledged it. I also want to say, before we begin, I was notified today. A lot of you know my friend Danny. He lost his brother today. Some of you may see the show that we do, the Joe and Danny live stream every Friday morning. His brother Guido passed away at 3 a.m. in the morning. And my heart goes out to him. And I know that he and his brother were very close. So I wanted to remember George and also Danny's brother Guido today. So on the same day. So let us start. Yes, indeed. The idea, John, is that hopefully the public gets its say today. Hello, 50 Thunderer. Thank you for remembering George. Hello, Ramoga. James Farley, hi. Let's see. Yes, indeed, Anthony. Thanksgiving was good. I hope yours was as well. Hello, Mike. Douglas. Hi, Mark. Thank you very much. Have you watched the anthology? All about the Beatles. Hello, how are you? Hello, Daniel. Okay, so far, episodes 1 and 2 were enjoyed. Yes, indeed. Yep. I want to thank everybody here in advance. Anybody that has any well wishes for Danny about his brother. I'm just going to leave them in the comments here. I'm not going to put them all on screen. Okay. It won't be long. Sounds great. Yeah, a lot of the music sounded great, I thought, on the new anthology TV show. Hi, Rory. How are you? I have indeed watched all 9 episodes of Anthology, 3 of the most pleasant mornings I have spent in a while. Well, if you hang on a little bit, Mark, I'll try to remember to put a link up, and maybe, if you want to join later, we could talk a little about it, if you want to. I'm going to put a link up there for anybody, that I'm familiar with wants to join, You prefer the DVD or the new anthology? Well, it's a mixed bag because I like things about the old one, the DVD. For one thing, you get some more footage and certain things were cut out, but with the new version, things were added. So I think the new one that's out now, 2025, we'll call it, is very good to watch more quick, and it's a breezy fashion. It moves very nicely. It doesn't lag, because as much as there are good things in the DVD from 2003, DVD does lag a bit, Okay, I'm disappointed about Anthology Part 9. You didn't see Real Love and Now and Then in the Making. Well, you saw a little bit of Real Love. Yeah. I wanted it to be a little more, but I was happy. There was a lot of stuff, new stuff there too. So I like that. But yeah, there was some stuff, other stuff I would have liked. But if you look at my reviews, anybody, you could see how I felt. Larry, Canadian Stud Muffin, what's going on? I just finished episode 4 and I have no complaints. I had many laughs as the Beatles were also funny. I was very impressed. Lots of laughs too, and footage I've never seen or just don't remember. Exactly. Thank you, Tom. Same to you. The good news is that we still have our DVDs, so we can go back to them if we miss certain parts that were left out of the new version, albeit at standard definition. Well, that's another thing. When I went back, because I went back to some of the DVDs after I watched this new presentation, and the DVDs look really primitive. After sitting there and watching a few hours straight at the time of the new 2025 restored, enhanced, and anthology, when you go back to watch the DVDs, they're rough. I never noticed them before, but they're rough, so that's one demerit for those. Hi, Lila. Do you think they should have called Everything a Day once John had gone? The recording's fine. But just the three of them, Threedles sections, show a massive gap without John. No, I mean, they did call it a day once John had gone. In 1980. It wasn't until 15 years or so, 14, 15 years, whatever it was, that they really got together again, the three of them. And I think it was wonderful. I think it was a wonderful reunion. I'm very happy they did it. Hi, Gary. Okay. What's your thoughts on Now and Then being released prematurely? Do you think it would have been better being released as an EP with the release of the 30th anniversary? Well, it turns out that you can't argue with success, right? I mean, they put Now and Then out as a single, right, in 2023, and it did fantastic. It became number 1. And I know a lot of people out there don't like considering it a Beatles song, although I do, okay, and they do. Which is what matters. It doesn't matter what I think. Doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It matters what they thought, the people involved. But anyway, it's a number 1 Beatles song. So it worked. It worked, and it was popular, and it was a big hoopla. So no, I think they did a smart thing. But that's hindsight, right? Because 2020 hindsight, if it had been a failure and it was a bomb, then they would have done wrong, Okay, I think it was 3 years ago that I watched the whole DVD anthology set, and I was less impressed with it than I had been in all previous viewings. It felt slow and clumsy in places, and I'm inclined to agree. I mean, there's lots of things that are wonderful in the longer DVD anthology series. Let's face it. However, what's also going on here is not just how much more or less you're getting. It's also about the art of filmmaking and how something moves, whether something drags or it's a little bit, yes, awkward and clumsy and too full out. I know Michael Nolan didn't like the word fluff. Michael, there's a lot of fluff in the 9 DVD, a lot of filler in that. The new version really moves well. Of course, looks and sounds great. Yeah, it does. I mean, I was fair in my videos. I said there was some black and white footage that with the new technology they're doing, whether it's AI, whatever they're trying to do, the artifacting, some of the long shots and even some of the close-ups at times of some of the black and white footage, not all of the black and white footage, because God knows some other guy at the cavern looked and sounded better than I'd ever seen it. And that was worth the price of admission for episode 1 on its own right there. But some of the other black and white footage, they look pasty, too white, too washed out. But I really think that all that is a small price to pay, considering looking at the glass as 3/4 full rather than 1/4 empty. That's how I'm saying it. Hello, Ali. What's going on? Watched all 4 parts on Disney. So, with all the anticipation for this anthology, did it meet your expectations? Well, I didn't expect it to be shortened. I expected, like most people did, I expected it was going to be pretty much the same thing we'd seen. There were talks that maybe there was going to be some enhanced quality and that there were going to be maybe some more footage. Turned out, as I said in my videos, we lost some stuff. But by the same token, we gained some new stuff here and there, too. But I like the way it turned out. It's different. We have both. We have the long DVD version, even though it doesn't look that good now. It doesn't move as good. And we got the more concise one that's brought up to date. One thing I said in my videos I want to make clear is that if I could find one takeaway that I liked best about this brand new version that's on Disney Plus right now, what I liked about it the most was that John felt like he was more involved. And I think a lot of that reason is they got a lot more audio clips of John than they had in the first one. And they also had a lot more audio clips of Paul, George, and Ringo. Also, they didn't rely all on visuals, because I think that's what happened in the first anthology presentation. You had a lot of video footage of Paul, George, and Ringo in the 90s talking about this, where John, every once in a while, you had to grab an old 1960s and 1970s clip. The scales were not even, but when you use a lot of audio interviews clips from John, Paul, George, and Ringo together and fly them all in, now you can have them on equal ground. I think they did that. I'm wondering if that was a conscious thing, because I think that was a brilliant idea, because it made John able to be more present with his audio and putting the others down to his level too, where they all have audio too a lot. So they relied a lot on audio reminiscences over the footage instead of only new updated Paul, George, and Ringo videos. So I love it, because John, to me, it felt like John was gone. It felt like John had left us very much in the original anthologies that I watched. The new one, I feel like John is like there with the other guys. And that to me, that's the biggest takeaway for me. Hello, James. Hello there, Sir Paul. What's going on? Expecting to watch Anthology 2025 this weekend. Man, do you agree that Let It Be Naked deserves a re-release, and 2026 could be a perfect moment? Cheers from Argentina, a Beatle land. Is this the Greedo? Is this Paul Greedo, or is this somebody else? Maybe it's not. I don't know who this is. Maybe it's not Argentina. Okay. But no, I personally, I think you're got a different guy here, I think. But anyway, if you're asking me, do I think Let It Be Naked should be re-released? Not really. I'm kind of like Get Backed Out. That's just me. I mean, I have it. I got it when it was new, so of course I'm happy. But no, I don't think so personally. There can be too much of a good thing. Things are unreleased for a reason, and I wish what people would understand, the people that are championing, and understandably so, the old 9 DVDs this set that we love, not 9 DVDs, the 9 episodes from the 2023 DVDs. Let's leave it at that. However many episodes there are, 2023 version of DVDs. You forget that those were also cut too. They didn't contain everything. They're not the full elongated director's cuts. They don't have all the mastered material that they had to work with. It was edited for that too, So it's funny. It's just funny. Listening to the recordings in the studio, I love it when John calls Paul Macca. Yeah, that's always his nickname. I love that too. Will you be getting the double A side on clear vinyl single? I don't know. I know it's supposed to be available. I'm not going to go crazy to get it. If I happen to see it, I'll get it. That's how I feel about that. But be happy that you get to see it. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. True. I missed a few things from the old version, especially the drop-in live performance where the host kept running on stage after the Beatles finished each number. Yeah, I know what you mean. They put a little bit of drop-in, Swedish drop-in, but not all of it. And other things were missing too. But I was surprised in a good way about Anthology, especially the first two parts. Okay, would maybe be nice if we got an extended Blu-ray release. I won't be holding my breath though. I think this 2025 cut of Anthology flows so smoothly, works so well that I wouldn't want it to be changed now. If you want to have it released on Blu-ray as it is, the way it is on Disney Plus, and then have more footage somehow as extras, that I'd be all right with. Hello, hello. First time viewing of Anthology. The fact we even have this footage is amazing, truly amazing. Yeah, we take everything for granted now, we're spoiled. This is true. I have heard bits and pieces of Anthology on the radio called the Beatles channel. Yep. Okay, my opinion, Free as a Bird is the best song of the three, the 2025 version. Yes, I agree. I like the 2025 version of Free as a Bird better, too. And I'm coming to appreciate the 2025 version of Real Love as well. I know that's sacrilege. 90% of you out there don't like the new 2025 version. And I do think that George is still represented in there. I don't know if his parts are a little more muted, or maybe there's some missing at the end of his guitar, but he's still there. And Andy Nichols made a very good point. Andy Nichols said how he liked the new 2025 Anthology version of Real Love. Or we should say Volume 4. Let's leave that. He liked it because John's voice sounded more normally paced, whereas in the 96 version for him, John's voice sounded what he called like a chipmunk, a little too sped up. And I never thought about it. He actually opened my ears to that. And I agree in that regard. I think the new one has John's voice much better paced. Yes, there were ad breaks in the one I was watching. I don't know if everybody had ad breaks, but I definitely had ad breaks. Every 10 minutes, there were ads that were 1 minute and 45 seconds, almost 2-minute ads every 10 minutes. There were a few times where a particular Beatles song was repeated through the episodes, maybe a bit too often. I agree. Yes, Twist and Shout, It Won't Be Long, especially. I think I'll Be Back might have been once used a couple of times. All My Loving. I don't like when that happens. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but I wish they would make. See, I can criticize too. I really wish they had made more of an effort not to repeat songs too much. I suppose you could say we have Let It Be, but we also have Get Back. Well, that's a good example. I never thought of it that way. Think of it that way, folks. That is, Lila, thank you for saying that. That's how I'm going to describe it. Consider the old DVD long set, Get Back, equivalent of the Get Back project that Peter Jackson did in 2021, and consider that the new Disney Anthology that's a little shorter, that's missing an hour or whatever it's missing, is like Let It Be. You know what I mean? It's a more condensed version of what went on. So that's the way I look. They're both worthy in their own way. That's a good analogy. Hello, Michael. I watched your I think it was live, but I watched the playback. Now and Then was a lightning in a bottle. I don't question the year it was released, just the album it was attached to. Yeah, I see what you're saying there. Okay. Would you have liked Paul and Ringo to have a brief updated version of what their perspective and see if they had any change in opinion? Well, let me put it this way. I didn't mention this, which I forgot. You forget things. Even when you're doing videos, there are things you meant to say that you didn't. I thought I heard Paul's voice from Now. The slightly more, I'm not making fun of Paul, take it easy, the slightly more older Paul voice, the little raspy voice. I thought I heard some audio of that plugged in here, that there was some upgrades. You want to call it an upgrade? Words sometimes just flow out like across the universe. Upgrade, just updates, enhancements, whatever you want to call it. Additions from Paul. I heard a few of those. Anybody else? Okay. I'm surprised Paul tries to not take the blame, quote, for Magical Mystery Tour. He usually defends everything, and Magical Mystery Tour is fabulous, by the way. He does defend the Magical Mystery Tour. He does. I think he defends it too much when he says, a lot of people like Spielberg, when they were doing films and everything, they said, that Magical Mystery Tour, that was a film like we took notice of. What did you take a notice of as a director, Spielberg? How not to make a film? You know what I mean? Yeah, Magical Mystery Tour was very helpful to learn what not to do. Trying to see, I criticize the Beatles as well as praise them. Michael Nolan, I'm glad you heard that, because you said something about in your show that there's Beatle fans. They're always searching for that cherry. They dig down. You said in the ice cream sundae to look for that cherry to put it on the top. I say there's some people out there, on the other hand, that are supposed to be Beatle fans, but all they do is look for the cherry so they can throw it on the floor. You see that's what I'm saying. But yeah, and I by the way, I don't agree here, Lila. I do not think personally Magical Mystery Tour is fabulous, but I think it's fun to watch, and mostly for the song performances. The music performances are what really makes it. I agree. The cavern shots were very good. Some Other Guy was amazing. I never saw Some Other Guy look and sound as phenomenal as it did this time. Other clips suffered, I'm torn. With one hand they giveth, and with the other hand they taketh away. I prefer the DVDs overall, and that's what I'll stick with. But it was interesting to see the additional clips looking great. Also, speaking of additional clips, don't forget that since we had gotten the Get Back film from Peter Jackson in 2021, now when we look at the Get Back segment, part 8 of the anthology, now we get a lot of stuff, but not so much that it's too much or it lingers too much. We get stuff added from Get Back, so now they have more now than they did in 1995 or whenever it was, the 90s. Now they have more from the Get Back footage that they can put in. So you can't say the Get Back footage isn't enhanced in the new version of this. Okay. Do you think when it gets released on DVD and Blu-ray, do you think it will include everything or exactly as Disney is showing it? Well, we don't know that. Bill, I'm too busy wondering if we're going to get it, period, because Disney is not very interested a lot of times in putting stuff out on physical media. And I know even we finally got Get Back put on media by Disney, but that was like pulling teeth too. That took a long time. I don't have Disney Plus, but with so many liking the complete Beatles version, this is like a more compact and less dragging version of Anthology, better for new casual fans. Yeah, I agree with that. I do. I even think it's good for longtime fans. It really works well. Everybody praises the complete Beatles. The complete Beatles was fantastic for 1982 when I first saw it. I had the VHS tape. Fantastic. Nothing like that was out. It was only 2 hours. And quite frankly, these days, I don't think the complete Beatles holds up anymore. And it's the one value that the complete Beatles has, if you ever can see it, copy. It has interviews with people that we didn't get in the anthology, like people like Tony Sheridan, Jerry Marsden of Jerry and the Pacemakers, Alan Williams, Billy J. Kramer. There were some people that were interviewed in there that were not interviewed this time. I think that's the value. And even the complete Beatles has a few clips that we don't have in either anthology. So, all right. Okay, it all looked and sounded so much better that I hope they release the physical media as a Blu-ray. I hope they do too. Yes, DVD was 2003. I hope I didn't say 23 because it was a mistake if I said that. I know it's 2003, and 9 times out of 10 I've said 2003. I know that my good friend Beatly Tone, I happened to watch his video, and he slipped up at one point and said 2023. Hey, it happens when you're making videos and talking live. and stuff. Do you think we might ever get something similar to get back from the 94, 95 sessions if enough material exists for maybe 2 to 3 episodes? Well, I was hoping that's what they were going to do with this. But, they're always looking. Can't always blame them. People call it cash grab. And I'm going to remind all of you, you're damn right it's a cash grab. You're damn right. Everything's a cash grab. Since the beginning of time, people want to make money. They're in business. They're in marketing. You know what was a cash grab? The Love Me Do single back in 1962. They put it out. They marketed it. They wanted to sell. They wanted to make money. And then they capitalized and made an album. The Beatles, they rushed out Please Please Me. They recorded it in like 12 hours or something, one day, whatever it was. And they took all the numbers that the Beatles already knew and put it in their live act, put it on record. It's a cash grab. Wanted to make money. Come on. It's cash grab nonsense. Let it go, folks. But anyway, I just wanted to get that out of my system. If you could choose what Beatles release, what would you put out? An anniversary or something else? Everybody out there that's bitching and moaning about Rubber Soul, you're going to get Rubber Soul. Okay, so it didn't happen in 2025. People said, I know Michael Nolan said, this is the perfect time to put out an anniversary of Rubber Soul, right? 60 years anniversary. But it's also 30 years anniversary of the anthology. And I think they did a good idea by remembering the anniversary of the anthology from 95 to 2025, because the anthology in 95 produced a lot of brand new Beatle fans. A lot of new Beatle fans really liked anthology, became fans from that. I understand them paying tribute. What I'm saying is, of course, I want Rubber Soul. I want Rubber Soul. I want Please Please Me box. I want With the Beatles box. I want A Hard Day's Night, Beatles for Sale, Help. I want to get it all. I want them to take Yellow Submarine, A Magical Mystery Tour, maybe make one set out of that. I want all this stuff to come. You'll get Rubber Soul. Relax. Maybe 2026. I hope, because I hope they put out 2026, because as a content creator on the Beatles, I don't want to hear any more moaning about it not being out. So I really hope. And I'm telling you, when we do get Rubber Soul, you can have a lot of people just breezing past. Oh, it's out, great. Move on. Believe me, there's not going to be a lot of talking. A lot of people are going to say, we've already heard these songs. They put half of these songs out already on the remastered on the Red album. We had half of these. Anyway, I didn't really answer your question here. I want to answer it. If I could choose, I would like them to put out and to see a dedicated live Beatles box, meaning not all necessarily the live stuff they ever did, but the best audio and video quality. Put out the best shows. That doesn't necessarily mean Tokyo from '66, because the Beatles did not perform very well on that show. I know we want it for the sake of completion. Well, we all have them on bootlegs, so you can see Tokyo on bootlegs. But my number one pick personally is a dedicated live set that's got the best of the best, and that brings me to Paris, 1965. That's one thing I did miss. I was disappointed in the new anthology. There was no footage from 1965 Paris performance, whereas in the DVD set, we got a lot of it, a good amount of it. All right. Does one of the episodes still end with Leave My Kitten Alone? I think it does. I think one of the early ones. Of all the episodes, what was your favorite? A good question, Larry. Why can't I give you an answer? I really don't know. There's not one that sticks out as my favorite. I thought I'm not going for the cop out here. Oh, they were all great, but maybe my favorite in some ways was the 9th one, just because it was different and because I wanted to see whatever new, unseen newer footage from the 90s with the Threetles we had. So in some way, but one of the things I was disappointed about was that they made it the last disc, the last disc. Edit, go get the scissors and edit that out. The last episode with the reunion in the 90s. It turned into a mini anthology. Too much of that. They wasted too much time going through their history and talking about their history again as if we're watching another little anthology before we get to the meat and potatoes of them reuniting and recording the songs. Anyway. Oh, boy. I got overexcited by episode 9. I was hoping there would be 2 to 3 hours of totally new footage. No, I knew it wasn't going to be that much. It will be great for anyone who hasn't seen the extra material DVD. Yeah. If you never saw the extra disc that goes with the DVD box, if you've never seen it, you're going to love it. You should love it anyway. The 2025 version of Real Love is kind of like a stripped back thing. Yeah, in a way. For me, I was more disappointed with what could have been rather than what it was. Well, that's what happens with everything. People get like that a lot. It's not unusual. It's Real Love where George's guitar parts at the end are eliminated or reduced. But overall, I'm thrilled with the new mix of Real Love, my favorite of the 3 reunion songs. I've been up and down on it. First, I thought it was good, an improvement. Then I started thinking, no, the more I think about it, it's not an improvement. And then when I thought about it more, the fact that John's vocal is not sped up as much as in the 96 version, it's a little slower, more comfortable. I liked it for that. There's also the drum intro that I like. And I still heard George. In it, though I think maybe it's subdued and it's not as much as we got, which is unfortunate. But I don't even mind John's voice in it anymore. At first, I was saying, like a lot of people, it was too robotic. It was too auto-tuned or whatever they did to it. It sounded too fake. So thankful we got it. John recorded it on these things on crappy cassette tapes in the 70s, without a lot of fidelity, Yes, he demonstrated that chipmunk voice indeed. Is 4 still in the car? Yeah, I think disc 2 is. I had disc 1 in the car for a long time, CD. Now I got CD 2. Okay, which Hollywood Bowl edition do you love the most, 77 or 2016? Good point. Let me bring this up for some of you people. I'm going to say I prefer a 2016 version because they give you a few more tracks that weren't given to us in 77. Although I was 15 years old in 1977, and I was really excited to go to the store with my now departed friend Mike to buy that Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl. We both loved it, buying it. But anyway, the screams were, I think, a little reduced compared to what they were in 77. But that brings me to the next point. There are actually people bitching out there because they cut out the audience reaction and a lot of the screaming in the live performances. And I understand that too, because I've actually defended the album live at the Hollywood Bowl because I said, I don't mind there being a wall of screams. That's what it was like. You have to feel like you're at the concert, right? But by the same token, a lot of people whined about that, said, oh, I hate the Hollywood Bowl album. Why couldn't they get rid of those screams? It's terrible. All you hear is a wall of screams. Why can't they get rid of it? Now you have Anthology 2025 where they took the screams out or really quieted the audience. People don't like that now. Put the screams back. Put them back. You see what I mean? And let me tell you, as a content creator on Beatles, it's tough juggling these back and forth. Yes, this is the day we lost George, which I made an acknowledgement of that at the beginning. Yes. I'm still hankering for an ultimate cut, which adds the performances from Let It Be into the otherwise more comprehensive Get Back. Hey, I can dream, can't I? No, again, I'm gonna say here, if you're talking about Let It Be and The Long and Winding Road, right, and Two of Us, those 3 good, perfect promo film things that they did on the last day, I like that they're left to Let It Be. You know why? Because, again, just like with this new anthology, it's something different that's not in Get Back. So you have a reason to make Let It Be still valuable, in my opinion. The Get Back film now has, at the end, it has them rehearsing and getting prepared to record those songs, those films, promos, whatever you want to call them. They're not really promos, I don't think, but proper recordings of the songs. In Get Back, we have those rehearsals and then playing around. Then we get the real versions in Let It Be. So both versions are important. Which is the Beatles album that you own more copies? Many questions for me, I know. Yeah, well, it's okay. Let's see. I think it's either Introducing the Beatles or the red US copy of A Hard Day's Night. I think that's it. Those are the two that I own the most of. Okay, I'll have to listen for the older Paul voice. Didn't pick that up. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It wasn't a lot of it, and I forget. I should have I had a notepad there. When I do these things, I have rough notes here, very rough notes, and it's in shorthand. I actually have a very good writing. I print very well, and I have a great penmanship. However, when I write these, I write shorthand for myself, so I can read it. But anyway, okay. I'm sorry I don't understand the language, but thank you for participating. Hi, Marcus. No offense to Paul and Ringo, but I wouldn't need an updated interview from them about the song and the project. I feel like the modern interviews become more and more uninteresting. That's fair enough. Hello, Darren. Thank you for being here and joining us. Notice that Anthony was in the Mikey Arugula anthology video. He must think the Beatles world has gone mad. No, Anthony likes that stuff. Anthony watched Anthology with me, at least the last three. We got together and watched 7, 8, and 9 together. Did you ever watch the uncut the director's cut from Anthology 96? Lots of footage not used. Paul's comment cut from both. When John met Yoko, he said, John loved the fact that Yoko did not know the Beatles. Well, I actually, even though I'm a big fan and I have tons of bootlegs back there, I never saw, what a revelation this is. I've never seen the entire director's cut. But that's all I want to say about that is that, again, that's what I'm trying to say, where even the DVD that came out in 2003, I almost said 2020, the 2003 DVDs that came out, even though it's longer, it's still not the director's cut. So everybody that's whining about, Anthology Disney 25 is not as long as the DVDs from 2003. Well, the 2003 didn't have everything either. So you should be complaining about that. Yes, I was the one who noticed that. Thank you very much. Thank you. I did notice that when the Mikey Arugula video. Yes, I did. On part 9 were those, we get this right. On part 9 were those new letting home footage that John provided. Yeah, I saw that. I don't think I've ever seen that footage. That's another thing. In part 9, there was home movie footage of Sean and John relaxing and John riding with Sean on a bike. I don't think I'd ever seen that footage before. Thank you for bringing that up. I found it interesting that the new footage from Get Back, which was widescreen in that show, was back to 4.3 in Anthology. That's interesting, too. Yeah, that's interesting. Penny Lane, hello, you're in my ears and in my eyes. So, okay, we now need a Shea Stadium release. Well, Shea Stadium release, somebody told me that Giles Martin mentioned that he's working on Shea Stadium. Did anybody hear that? There's an interview going around with Giles Martin that I have not watched. And somebody told me that he mentioned that we're going to get a Shea Stadium, or he's working on something for Shea Stadium. What story or part of the documentary did you find the funniest? Well, probably a bunch of them, but the first thing that comes to mind, which they left in this one too, is the sequence where I think, I don't know, maybe Ringo says, I don't know really about this for sure. You might have to ask Paul on this. And Paul says, well, I don't know for sure. You might have to ask George Martin. And they cut to George Martin. He's just like, and they cut away from him. He doesn't know either. And that was fun. Nothing wrong with cash grabs, and if it makes money, you will get more. This is Tom H. Is this Tom Hunyadi or not? Because let me know. I'm glad they kept some segments in 4:3, and the interviews were in 16:9. That's another thing. I don't know if anybody cares about this. All the interviews that were done in the 1990s, specifically for Anthology, by Paul, George, and Ringo, they're in the wide aspect ratio, and in some cases, all cases, you could see more, and they're gorgeous. They're really gorgeous color because they're the 90s. They look beautiful on their widescreen. That was nice. The complete Beatles, that footage where they turn blue because their capes run in the driving rain on the back of a trailer. Yeah, Paul loses his umbrella in Nowhere Man. Live footage, great film. Yeah, that's a sequence that still was kept in there. I think that Australia. I think that was Australia footage. Some other guy absolutely should have been on the CD and vinyl Anthology 4. What were they thinking, not including it? I feel the same way, Phil, now that you mention it. But the thing I always find it funny about Beatles fans is that we all want something. And if we took 30 Beatle fans out there, all 30 of us would have different ideas what they should have left off, what they shouldn't have left off, what they would have done differently, what they could have done. Everybody thinks about that. Okay. Webster's Online defines cash grab as, quote, the greedy pursuit of an opportunity for making money, especially when done without regard for ethics, concerns, or consequences. Not everything qualifies. I don't care, okay? Webster has a lot of new definitions of things that I don't go for, okay? There was no such thing as a cash grab years ago. That's a relatively modern term that everybody latches onto. And I could name a lot of modern terms that all of a sudden Webster, I'm not going to go there, but you know what I'm driving at here? Anybody? A lot of things out there in the world today, what you could say and not so words, that this is the new definition. I don't want to hear the new definition. Okay. Sorry, Mark. That's just my opinion on that. Yeah, Paul driving the boat. Exactly. Yeah. What do you think is holding up the release of the Super Deluxe edition of Rubber Soul? Lack of outtakes? No, I just think they had priorities. I think Rubber Soul might even be done already or close to it. I just think they had other things they wanted to put out first before Rubber Soul. I think they wanted to do this anthology celebration first. That's what I think. And yeah, I was 14 when Anthology came out. My mind was blown. Exactly. A lot of people got into the Beatles because of Anthology. And that's another video I'm going to make somewhere down the line. And I've said, I'm going to say what I always say. Some of you have heard this before. Some of you have never heard this before. Here's the thing. We need young fans. We need new generations. I love when I meet somebody that's a younger fan and they're so passionate. You see them here online. You see them on social media, TikTok, everywhere, Facebook. Thank God for them. But I did notice that for some reason, Apple and the Beatles company, they're gearing everything towards Gen Z or the generation before Gen Z. I don't know what that was. But that's great. But you know what? All your fans out there are not just young newbies, and that bothers me. You understand where I'm coming from? I'm being fair about it. I wouldn't want it to be any other way. Man, it does my heart good every time I see a young person. But it's not just about you. It's also about the rest of us. So that's a little bone in my craw that I have to make a video on. And I will make a video at some point going forward in the next days, week, 2. All right. Let's see. Saw a video of you looking at the Sgt. Pepper's session photos. What was that? Did you buy it? Hello to Brazil in a small town. Thank you so much for joining. Yeah, I forget what the name of the book was now. Was it Kaleidoscope Eyes or something like that?
It was very expensive. There was some amazing photographs in that book. I would have liked to have it, but it was like a few $100s or something. It was outrageous. It's very, very valuable. Okay. Does Mikey Arugula or you have any Christmas Beatles decorations? I know I have a couple of little ornaments. In fact, do I have one here? I used to have one hanging out here. I don't know if I still have it. Handy. I don't think I do. But anyway, I think I got a yellow an ornament of a yellow submarine that goes on the Christmas tree. I mean, we haven't put the Christmas tree up this year. So, do you think we might get a deluxe box set of 33 and a third in the future? My favorite George Harrison solo album. Anthony, I really like George Harrison's 33 and a third album too. I think it's one of his best solo albums, and I would like to get it, like all of them. I think I can't answer that because I'd like to think we will. But there's just something going on there with the Harrison estate. They don't want to put anything out. Or the stuff they put out is the same old thing. I mean, yesterday for Record Store Day, they put out a zoetrope version of Living in the Material World. I don't want it. I didn't get it. I don't care. And I didn't care about the All Things Must Pass zoetrope either. Now, of course, that's just me. Your mileage may vary. But come on. I was glad when they finally put out Living in the Material World. They did a fantastic job. I want to give credit where it's due. The Harrisons did a fantastic job putting out Living in the Material World. But there's other albums here. Come on. Will you get moving? Really. Look at the Lennons, how good they're doing. And McCartney too, but to a lesser point because the archives used to come out, more frequently, but you got to get with the program. Olivia, Danny, please, we want more Harrison. I completely agree that the lengthy recap in episode 9 was unnecessary. I kept wishing they get to the meat. Yeah, that's what I felt. I liked what they showed, but I wanted more. Why is it that I don't know, people underrate which people underrate Let It Be and For Sale? For me, they are 10-point albums. If those records belonged to another band, they'd be their greatest. Oh, I agree. But look, what gets me about that is I think all the Beatles albums are great. The Beatles never released a bad album, in their regular catalog of studio album. Let It Be and Beatles For Sale. Like you said, other groups would be lucky if their best album was that, Let It Be, I think, has 3 number ones on it. Now, we got Long and Winding Road. We got Let It Be, Get Back. And the song Across the Universe is considered a Beatles classic, even though it wasn't like a number one single. There's like 4 classics on there alone. But here's the thing. We all have favorites. I don't see anything wrong with, even if they're all 10 out of 10 albums, I don't see anything wrong with fans ranking their favorites from most favorite to least favorite. And sometimes they have Let It Be near the bottom. They have Beatles For Sale near the bottom. Some people have Help or With the Beatles. I think it's sacrilege, personally, to have With the Beatles near the bottom. To me, With the Beatles is sometimes my favorite Beatles album, the UK. But a lot of people put that. But I'm saying, I know what you're saying, but there's nothing wrong with ranking them how they prefer them. That's the kind of thing. And they still don't have Bad to Me. John's demo for Bad to Me is not on it yet. In the 2025 Real Love, George's guitar bits were eliminated from the final chorus and reduced in volume and faded early over the end of the song. Yeah, I don't know what that is. I really wonder about that. Sometimes I wonder if some of that was about the kind of thing where George liked to echo phrases. Remember the argument that Paul and George had where George wanted to do Hey Jude by, Hey Jude, don't make it bad. He wanted to play, and Paul didn't see it that way and didn't appreciate that. I agreed with Paul on that, by the way. It was Paul's song. He wants it the way he wants it. But anyway, I don't know if that's why. That's a mystery as to why they did that. I don't understand. Okay, I love the Beatles Anthology 2025. The only thing I didn't like was he never mentioned what happened to Stu Sutcliffe. They mentioned him joining the band, but that's it. Yeah, I go along with that. It wouldn't have been so difficult just to have a little bit saying that he fell in love with Astrid and then he died, you know, young. There would have been nothing wrong with that, including that. Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl is one of the greatest live albums ever, along with these other ones. Yes, it is a great live album. We don't have much official Beatles live stuff yet, right? Is anything interesting in the record store day list? Not for me. The only thing that was interesting for me as a Beatles fan was the first vinyl release of Ringo Starr's 2005, I think, album Choose Love, which was canceled at the last minute. So it was canceled. It's supposed to be out for Record Store Day, but I hear it's still coming out. It's going to be coming out in 2026 instead of it premiering as a Record Store Day first. That's what I think. Yes, I can't see how many likes I got here. I appreciate that, Daniel. Hit the like button, please. It helps. It helps the algorithm. It helps. Crazy to think the Beatles only have one live album 10 years after they stopped touring 50 years ago. I getcha. When they did the Hollywood Bowl reissue, they could have released 2 complete concerts, one from 64 and one from 65. Yeah, they could have. They could have. I don't care personally that they didn't, but never seen Anthology. I was expecting seeing interviews with Pete Best and Jimmy Nicol, but it was not in it. Well, Jimmy Nicol disappeared from life. You know, Jimmy Nicol filled in for Ringo, of course, when Ringo was out with tonsillitis, and he joined the Beatles for just for a couple of weeks or something. And Jimmy Nicol was never heard from again, really. And there's a book out called The Beatle Who Vanished about Jimmy Nicol and what happened to Jimmy Nicol. So you're not going to get any interviews with Jimmy Nicol. He don't want to talk. As far as Pete Best, I always thought that they should have had Pete in there a little bit. But if Pete was going to be in there, personally, I wouldn't have had any footage of him bitching about, I don't understand why they let me go. They shouldn't. I don't know why I was fired. Why they, that kind of thing. He could have talked about what it was like to be in the Beatles and some memories they had of playing together in Hamburg and stuff. But yeah, I would have liked to see a little Pete Best in there. Hello, Craig. I don't hear from you as much as I used to, but I always appreciate your support. Thank you very much. This is a line from Jaws. I know what that is right away. Polly do the print. Let Polly do the printing, not Paulie. I can attest to Joe's writing. It is very good. I still cherish the signature you sent me on the photograph. I'm no star, okay? But this man Craig asked me once for a signed picture, so I sent it to him in England. Hello, Robbie. Afternoon to you. Would Ringo get upset, do you think, if an interviewer only talked to him about Anthology and not look up? Ringo has gotten very better about that. He's mellowed. There were times in the 1980s, for example, he would do shows like Merv Griffin or Phil Donahue, and he would be very upset that he was doing like the movie Caveman with his wife, Barbara. Well, they weren't married yet. Let's put it that way. They were engaged to get married. They met on the set of Caveman. And anyway, he wanted to talk about the movie Caveman that they're doing. And all he wanted to talk about was the Beatles. And he used to get really annoyed. He's gotten better. He's mellowed out about it. And I think that happens with age, Hello, Mad Team. I thought I was going to be very upset about the original DVD version being cut down, but I was pleasantly surprised how well it was done. What they added in more than makes up for it. Agreed. I agree. This might be a dumb question, but does Yoko have to approve of all these releases because she represents John? Yoko is not doing well. I actually got to talk to Sean Lennon. I met Sean Lennon in New York City at a listening event for the Power to the People box set. And one of the things I asked him, and I'm sure a lot of people asked, was, how's your mom doing? And he said, she's doing okay. And he said she's slowing down, but she's doing okay. That's what I would expect him to say. But Yoko doesn't really, I don't think, have anything to do with these anymore. I don't know that for a fact. Maybe a little bit she does. But I know she's not doing very well. But anyway, if you notice on these new anthologies, Sean Ono Lennon is listed as a producer. Sean is listed as a producer along with Paul and Ringo and Olivia Harrison. Also says Sean Ono Lennon. And I really want to salute Sean if he was responsible in any way for giving his dad, John, more airtime with the interview clips. Because, as I said earlier here, in case you missed it, one of the things I loved most about this is John seemed on a level playing field, same turf, with Paul, George, and Ringo this time. Because in the first go-around with Anthology, it just seemed like it wasn't equally distributed. There was a lot of on-camera new interviews from the 90s with Paul, George, and Ringo, obviously. And John, they had to fly in a few clips here and there. This time, it was all kind of equalized because they used a lot of audio clips. What I will for once you resort to audio clips, not only of John but also of Paul, George, and Ringo, I think you have a better chance of equaling the tally. Okay, I think I read somewhere that Peter Jackson said there was a bunch of footage from the White Album session, several hours worth. Yes, I had heard that too. And in one of my videos, I kind of said, I think I heard some rumblings about that. Yeah, I remember reading. When you do this all the time and you pick up Beatles information here and there, you hear things and it stays in your cranium somewhere and then you filed away, but you forget it. But yeah, I remember hearing something like that. You can see some of that White Album era session things in this. You know, Paul doing some Blackbird, John and Yoko sitting in there too. Paul doing Helter Skelter, a mellower version of Helter Skelter on guitar. I bet Shay will come as a bonus with a Rubber Soul Super Deluxe. It's interesting. Here's a quote from the Ruddles movie. I've never seen Candlestick Park as far as it being filmed, all of it visually. I've never seen it. Hello, James. I enjoyed the new anthology version on Disney Plus. When I'm afraid if people keep complaining about what's released from the Beatles and Giles Martin, it might all stop. Well, that's another thing. People don't think. Anybody who watches me, most of you've seen me before on my channel. Some of you don't know me yet. Maybe you're watching, you don't know my channel. I pride myself on being honest. I will call it as I see it. I will criticize the Beatles. Other times I'll praise the Beatles. And that goes for the solo Beatles. That goes for whether or not anybody sends me, something for free. The Lennon estate is wonderful, and they encourage you to be honest. They want you to complain if you feel something's not right. They said, we want to be able to know what we can improve and do better. I made no bones about the fact that I was pissed off that the woman's song from Sometime in New York City was not put on there. But I understand why, and I understand the reason they had to go that route in their minds. So I'm okay with it now, but still not 100%. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here, but the point is I always say what I feel, and so anyway, yeah, but as far as complaining goes, that's not going to stop me from complaining. If there's something I feel I want to complain about. But if it's too much, I don't know. Sometimes they read those things as the wrong way, or everybody's moaning and bitching about Anthology 4, the album, or they don't like Anthology 4. That's it. No more unreleased stuff. Sometimes that's the way it goes, Now, I'm not telling anybody to praise anything just to hedge their bets. You have to be honest. But just keep that in mind. Okay, the person who typed in Spanish before says, hi, saying hello from Mexico. My love for the Beatles will never die. Grandparents, parents, and young ones are Beatle fans. That's a wonderful comment. I wish I could have understood it, but thank you for clearing that up, Daniel. Giles needs to work on Shea Stadium thoroughly in order to put out a great release on every possible format. Oh, and believe me, people will be complaining about some things about Shea Stadium. Watch, you'll see. Hello, Elliot. Thank you very much for joining me here. They cut some things for political correctness, and they're in my videos. So I'm not going to say all of them. No, some of them are. Some people will probably say it here. I do wish that they would have gotten rid of Paul's lie that the Beatles weren't coming to America unless they had a #1 hit when Brian booked them for Sullivan before I Want to Hold Your Hand hit #1. Exactly. That's one of the things. People always say that the Beatles are the best judge of their history. They're the ones who know best. I always say the Beatles are the only ones who know how they felt being Beatles. If you want to know what it was emotionally like, physically like to be a Beatle, only those 4 guys know. Nobody else on earth. But as far as their own history goes, they get things wrong. In this, you could see again in the anthology from Disney, George and Ringo both thought that they only played Shea Stadium once. They played it twice. You're going to rely on George Harrison and Ringo Starr to do the facts and put the history books down. We played Shea Stadium one time. You're wrong, guys. How could I hate to tell you that, but you're wrong. But anyway, yeah. Hello, Scott. Thank you for popping in here. Oh, you're really trying to go for it today. Okay. The term cash grab was first used in 1922. I've never ever heard that used. You could say, I don't care. You want to read your whatever it is, Google makes a lot of mistakes too. Whatever you want to read that, you want to go by that, fine. Let's put it this way, okay? I've never heard anybody ever use the term cash grab except in fairly recent years. It's become a real trend. All right. So there's that. Yes, indeed. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous that there has to be a warning saying this film contains cigarette smoking. And also, I mean, it does say something about some light. Doesn't it say like some light swearing? Some of them say, and some light swearing, which I guess if you're a kid, all right. Okay, there you go. And yet George can mention reefer. You see, this is the thing. Don't get me started on that kind of thing. The W word and the PC words. Don't get me started on that. That's all I'm going to say about that. Any topic you wish this anthology approached or developed further? Well, we talked about Stuart Sutcliffe, what happened to Stuart Sutcliffe. The part with Manila in the Philippines, there was a little more they could have explained about what happened on the plane when they tried to hold Mal Evans, and he was saying about his wife to tell Lil I love her. It really looked serious. That's a couple of things. I'm trying to remember. I thought A Hard Day's Night and Help, especially Help, the movie, was given a short shrift. That's off the top of my head. Abbey Road also, it wasn't like it was kind of short. They don't have any real footage that we know of them in the studios much for Abbey Road. That's another thing. Does this anthology lean towards Yoko in any way? That's a good question. The Yoko, I gotta say, the Yoko, that's another thing. Yoko representation here was less. There wasn't a lot yay or nay about Yoko in this. 163 watching and only 14 likes. Please, people, I always say this. If you're enjoying this, if you like my channel, if you want to help, please hit the like button. That helps me out. It just helps. It helps out. Algorithm, they call it. Well, there's the negative, actually, too, the thumbs down. If you don't like me, don't give any thumbs up. What can I tell you? I was surprised at the number of F-bombs in the later episodes of Anthology. I don't remember those in the DVDs, though some might have been there, and certainly not on ABC. I don't know if Michael Nolan is still watching. I hope he is. Another point that he made, he said, who cares? A lot of us Beatle guys made a point that even with this episode now with Disney, that they say is shortened, it is shortened, but they're complaining about it being shortened. Back in 1995 on ABC, the first version of this was even shorter. It was even shorter. And Michael Nolan felt, who cares? What does that got to do with anything? I'll tell you what it's got to do with, in my opinion, Michael. What it has to do with is, back in 1995, everybody was damn happy to get it. You know, even though 1995 on ABC, the first one, was the shortest of them all, everybody still was deliriously happy to get it. It shows you people are just freaking, so damn hard to please. I'm enjoying the Anthology 4, and I'm watching my Anthology DVD again, and I love that as well. Not sure why Beatle fans are upset. Well, there are a lot of us out here, and not everybody gets what they want, when they want, or how they want. That's really what it comes down to. Yeah, you mentioned this in the comments. In part 9, George mentions that they will get back to Now and Then after they completed Real Love, which sadly never happened. I answered you. I don't know if you saw my answer. Personally, there's a couple of things here. Personally, I'm glad that in retrospect, in hindsight, I'm glad they never finished Now and Then, because I think the job that they did on Now and Then in 2023, and I know not all Beatle fans like it or agree, but I think it was a wonderful, supreme, almost like a religiously wonderful experience. And the fact that we lost John Lennon and George Harrison, the fact that they both died and weren't here, Now and Then takes on an even more touching, heartfelt significance to it. So I think it turned out wonderful. I don't think they would have done as good of job in 1996 or so, 95 or 6. I don't think they would have done as good of a job as it turned out. That's one thing. Now, as far as George mentioning they'll go back to it, I did notice that myself, and they never got back to it. But it's said that George didn't really like it. I don't know how true that is. That's what we have to go on, that George vetoed Now and Then. He didn't really like it. Now, in that particular camera shot, he might have said, we'll get back to that, just to keep it peaceful, but maybe he didn't want to go. It's like, yeah, we'll do that another time, just to blow it off. I don't know for sure. Okay, even the 3 hours long documentary Living in the Material World jumps from the 94 tour to handmade films. Yeah, that's a whole nother topic. The Martin Scorsese Living in the Material World film is a disappointment to me, massive disappointment. I love the new stuff that we see, but that's another thing. Felt too much like Anthology Light. It seemed like, instead of it being a George Harrison documentary, it felt like a Beatles documentary. And then later on, they don't even talk about 1974 to 82. They gloss over things so fast once we get into the latest solo career. Yeah, I was not happy with that. I'm thankful with Living in the Material World for all the new stuff we see and all the exciting stuff. One of my favorite things in there is the footage, not tragic, sad footage of the Beatles, Paul and George, signing the dissolving papers, the Beatles, the final papers to dissolve the Beatles. That's some of my favorite footage in there for, heart-tugging reasons. Yeah, I play a little bass, and I think you might be setting me up. I do. I play a little bass. There it is right there. Okay. Yeah, I use that to joke every now and then. Beatles for Sale is one of my favorites, not the favorite, but I listen to that album more than any other. Hello, Jim. Yeah, somebody asked me about that. Believe it or not, even as many bootlegs as I have back here and all kinds of stuff, I've never watched the entire director's cut. I've never seen it. Yeah, it's interesting to speculate how different Anthology would be if John had still been alive when they made it. That's another interesting point I want to say that was brought up in episode 9. They say how the Anthology was really something that Neil Aspinall kicked off back in 1970-71, right at that point. They were going to do this. One thing, I'll tell you one thing I wish they thought of. I don't know if they could have done this. There's a copy out there. You can see it on YouTube a lot. John Lennon on the Today Show in New York. And when I say the Today Show, Don't get that confused with the Tomorrow Show with Tom Snyder. It's not that. He's on the Today Show in the studio one morning, and it's 1974, and they're talking about the Beatles and how well they're all doing as solo artists in 1974. And John very optimistically says there's a film that we've been talking about doing forever called The Long and Winding Road. And in part 9, George does give that title as the original title. It got changed to Anthology. But this was in the minds of the Beatles from the 70s. And John talks about it and says, we might be doing this with all our clips that we have and our home movies and things. We might put it together called The Long and Winding Road. He was speculating that in 74. It would have been nice if they could get that clip. Maybe nobody thought of it. Nobody knew of its existence. Maybe it's a rights thing. They don't have the rights to do it. And the quality is not very good. But these days it's a videotape. It's not very good, but you could spruce it up a bit. Then we'd have people out there complaining, "Why, John looks like a zombie in this. Why? Look at the horrible quality. You're lucky to have it. It doesn't exist any other way." But anyway, it would have been great if they could have incorporated that for John's take on it. Okay, ADHD editing ruined episode 9. Too much rehashed archive footage interspersed every 5 seconds. Where's Love Me Do when I saw her standing there jam, etc., etc., etc. It is what it is. What the Beatles achieved in just over 7 years is astonishing. They reinvented themselves, and every album and every new release was superior to the previous one. I have to tell you, there's so many things. People ask me, what do you love about the Beatles? Or what's amazing to you about the Beatles? This is it. That's one of the main things, if not the number one thing, that they achieved all this from like 63 to 69. You kidding me? These days, it takes that long for a band just to make one album. You can go 10 years without an album, 5, 6, 7 years without an album. It is uncanny, and it's the likes of which we're never going to see again. I didn't know about this. Jimmy Nichols' son was involved in the anthology, and when Paul found out that it was his son, Paul tried to get him on. All I know for sure is that Pete is, though, very elusive. The only way they would have Pete in it would be about his sacking, getting fired from the group. That would be a downer on the program. Yeah, well, like I say, they couldn't talk about that. If they had him in, everybody would want him to talk about that. But really, he shouldn't be talking about that in it. Pete Best must be very happy sitting at home watching Disney Plus and counting his cash from this release. Yeah, well, I'm glad that he got compensated on the old anthology. So yeah, the good point, James Farley. Thank you for bringing this up. That's a wonderful scene. That's one of my favorite moments when they're meeting again, the Threetles, and you see the wives. You see Barbara, Olivia, you see them, and Linda McCartney, and they're all coming in there and they're saying hello. It's a beautiful scene. And I like the joke when, George takes the piss out of Paul just a little bit. Paul comes in with what looks like a leather jacket, and George says, "Is that the vegetarian leather jacket?" And, Paul says, "Yeah, it's a vegetarian leather jacket and vegetarian leather boots," or something like that. I like that. Also, there's a clip in there I want to mention that's really interesting. When the three ex-Beatles in the 90s are sitting together in chairs, talking again about how Paul was a workaholic. And I think he was. Paul tries to downgrade. Don wasn't a workaholic. He's a workaholic. And the Beatles, that's a good thing. They talk about how, they only might have made 2 or 3 albums or whatever Ringo said, 5 albums. If it wasn't for Paul pushing them to work. And Paul, I like very much. There's a clip here that I hadn't seen before. Maybe people have seen it, where Paul says, "Well, I'm proud," or something like that. "I'm happy that I liked working with the Beatles. I'm glad that I, did that." And he kind of like affirms that he's not going to apologize for that. He's glad. Good for you, Paul. I love that. Okay. I'm not sure if I would want a mal restored stereo live at the BBC. I think those should be the original mono. Now, look, the BBC tracks are pretty damn good already as they are, I think. But we'll see what the future brings with that. Peter Jackson should have gotten the episode 9 job instead of the ADHD Murray. Okay. Speaking of deluxe box sets, I think the Double Fantasy will top the lot if they get it right. All those demos and unreleased stuff. Yeah. Hello, Andrea. I thought Ringo looked older and less healthy in Anthology than he does now. Yeah, well, it's funny because, I mean, Ringo, he got sober in 1988, and the Anthology was done in the early and mid 90s. He's had more time to get it together, I think. I think that's what it is. He's had more time to sober up even more. Could we expect Beatles Anthology release on 4K and in a box set of some kind in the near future? Well, we don't know about that. And Disney seems very, very reluctant to put out physical media. We didn't get Let It Be yet. Okay. Let's see. I would like to see the Threedles come out of the sports car, but otherwise it was great. Didn't they come out of the sports car? Did they have that scene where they pull up? Yeah, Sean has gotten more involved, I think. Like I said, if Sean had anything to do with the improvement of John's representation in this version, I love it. Would Anthology had worked in a cinema? No, it's too long. Where are we at here? Do you think? You think if Stuart Sutcliffe hadn't left the Beatles to remain in Hamburg to pursue his paintings, and if Pete Best wasn't fired for the Beatles, had they remained in the Beatles' popularity, I don't think it would have worked with Stuart Sutcliffe or Pete Best. But of course, hindsight, is always 2020. We could see just how it worked out. I am surprised that Olivia and Danny didn't object to the removal of George's guitar parts from Real Love. Yeah. I don't understand that. But when you say removal, come on, I can hear George's guitar in the 2025 version. It's a little more subdued. And I think Mark was talking about that before. The difference is what happened. Okay, I heard Ken Scott mentioning a film crew from a news channel coming to the studio and film what we have seen, but nobody was happy about it. I was irritated that the Beatles' wives or girlfriends were barely mentioned by name. You see Cynthia, but she was only mentioned as your wife and very late by name. Maureen was never identified. Well, like I said, look, I mean, and especially in this version, come on, in this version, they're trying to make it, we know, tighter and more abridged to begin with. You want all the wives named? I don't think it's necessary personally, but I appreciate the opinion. We all have opinions. Patty got a name check for A Hard Day's Night. Jane Asher was seen in India but never identified. Come on. I can't agree with you on this one, Mark. I can't. Let's identify everybody and everything. Let's make it longer than the DVD set. I don't know. Well, that's exactly a good idea. Come on, you hear it. Paul or Ringo, come on my stream for an interview. Let's go. Pete Best should be credited more, just as much a part of the early story of the Beatles as the others. Well, I'm glad they mentioned him at all, because they did mention him, at least. They could have not mentioned him. Oh, okay. The question you asked was, do I think that Stuart or Pete Best would have made it big with the Beatles and its solo artists? Pete Best obviously didn't make it very big. I mean, he still performed, and God bless him, he retired recently. Pete Best announced that he retired officially now, but he's had a little bit of a career going. Stuart Sutcliffe, I think he belonged with artwork. That was his talent, and I'm glad that he was a very good artist. Should have stayed with that. Okay. Who wants the John Lennon anthology as a TV documentary? I wonder if all the tape exists from Double Fantasy. Well, that's there was a lot of film recorded on that, but there's all kinds of stories as to what happened. What happened there. So I don't know. Like this, I've heard that it was destroyed. Jack Douglas destroyed it. John didn't like himself in there. I heard that John didn't like the way he looked in it, and all this kind of stuff. Hey, Andy. Hello. What's going on? What's going on? Okay. I think we are the responsible ones to spread the love for the Beatles and 60s, 70s music to the new generations. Disney won't do it. We got to do it. I did with my 10-year-old daughter. Absolutely. Very nice. Families, I heard, families are watching this together. I want to watch it, but don't need the anthology. Okay, well, watch it. Let us know what you think of it. In all the discussion, I don't think anyone mentioned that they added 20 seconds of a new part to Now and Then. I ended up plunging into buying the 12 LP anthology box because I only have the CD versions. And more importantly, Amazon marked it down to $309 for Black Friday. Very good. Glad you got that deal. Yeah, me too. Would have been nice to see more footage of the Beatles working on Free as a Bird, Real Love, and Now and Then. Yeah, I agree. I have the CD versions. That's enough for me. Okay. Do you think that Mikey will buy a bus to stick that anthology advertisement on? And he could if he wanted to, I think. Glad to hear you say that about Now and Then. I thought it was fantastic and found it quite emotional. Yeah, me too. Now and Then is a special song. I really like it a lot. I don't know. There's people who didn't care, or they thought it was no big deal. They felt no emotion about it. You can't tell people how to feel or what to think. I go along with that. However, I don't understand it personally. I can't understand how any Beatle fan couldn't be touched to hell by that. Like wonderful heart tug. I don't understand it. Really loved episode 9. It fits perfectly with the original anthology series. Will it ever come out on Blu-ray? We really don't know. And we hope so. I hope so. If you think of this as a brand new thing and not replacing the 95 versions, I can enjoy it more. What I really didn't like was when AI made their faces look off. I didn't like that either. There were some parts, and it was usually black and white, some of the black and white footage, not all of it. But man, oh man, if we could have seen this in, say, 1973, if we could have seen the anthology 2025 in 1973, we'd be having heart attacks and fainting. It's so wonderful. But it shows you how picky we are, I mean, I agree with you. There was some alarming shots, overly white and pasty faces sometimes and things, and distortions occasionally. Do you think there will be another new release, or are we done? Full stop. I think Paul himself in the footage in episode 9 kind of says stuff to that nature, he kind of says like the Beatles, you never know. Always surprised, there'll always be more, or something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing. Oh, come on. I know. Let's see. What? Let me think about this. I know what you're trying to do, Ramoga. Is this really the time and place for it? I'll do it. I'll do it for you because I know you like this clip, okay? The question is, what do Fred Astaire and Godzilla have in common? I think the answer is they both dance, right? Okay, just for you, I did that because you're one of my regulars here that supports me. Neil Aspinall did start the ball rolling in the 70s. It's mentioned in The Longest Cocktail Party, right, about Apple. It was really George's finances that drove making it real. Yeah, exactly, because George needed some cash. Is the girl in the cavern section still in Anthology when she says they knew they had lost them once they got to number 1? Yes, she is still there. What's my karaoke choice or choices of Beatles songs? I don't have one. I did once do a karaoke to Ballad of John and Yoko. That was not in a club or anything. That was done at somebody's home once, without getting drunk. I did it. Let's see. As for a physical release, how do we let them know that we want it? I don't know. Write to Disney. Maybe you get enough. Yeah, you mentioned this in the comments in the studio section of the old anthology, not this one. It's not in there, that bit. They're listening to Golden Slumbers and body language. Paul gives George a look that snaps. I don't think there's anyone on it when they were trying to figure who plays bass on it. I think you're a little bit too harsh with this, Lily. You know, you got this thing where you think that, which is true to a point. You said that they're walking on eggshells. You could tell in the reunion footage at times they're walking on eggshells. That's true. But did you yet see? Have you seen, Lila, the new episode 9? Because if you see the whole thing, you will see that even though there's some awkward moments, I always thought the bit when they're playing guitar and they're doing Raunchy and they're doing Blue Moon of Kentucky and they're doing and that kind of stuff, that George seems a little uneasy and like to get the hell out of there. I think they cut the bit out of this one where George said, okay, let's do a short version or something like that. So there is some tension there. But if you see the new one on 9, I think they look at ease with themselves a lot. There's moments too when they're at ease. There's some, so I think it's exaggerated. Just a theory, but I'm guessing that Sean has an easier working relationship with Paul and Ringo than Yoko did. Maybe accounts for some of these improvements. That's interesting. Okay, what Andy Nichols said about John's voice being too sped up in Real Love was what always turned me off to it slightly, ever since it was first played on Anthology in '95. I mentioned that earlier. I agree. Andy made me see it in a different light, or hear it in a different light. I think I prefer the 2025 Real Love because the tape speed is a little slower. I did not order the Free as a Bird and Real Love single. I didn't. I may eventually get it. I'm not saying I'm not getting it. I'm not saying I am getting it. I'm more interested how Danny starts to lead the Harrison estate. I like to think that if Stuart Sutcliffe had lived, he would have painted a Beatles album cover like Klaus did for Revolver. That's a nice thought. I like most of what Sean's doing, and it's no surprise. He knows it. They know it. You know it. I don't like a lot of the saxophone removal sometimes. Well, sometimes it's removed. They're not all removed, but sometimes. It's my personal thing. We all have tastes. Okay, just reading that comment. Okay, just jumping in now. I missed the start. I'm happy with the new anthology. I haven't watched all the episodes yet. I like the Anthology 4 too. It's a good listen, and I agree. Anthology 4, of course, we got half of it. I'm only as a diehard fan, I don't care about the half that I already got. I care about the amazing tracks to me because I love studio outtakes with new vocals. That's why I love stuff like Tell Me Why, Every Little Thing, Matchbox, In My Life, I've Just Seen a Face, all this stuff, and Baby You're a Rich Man. That's why that I love it. For the new stuff, that was the big problem for me, was some of the older footage making the Beatles look like they were wearing mime makeup. That's a good way of putting it. I did notice that at one point. There was a point when they do this song. It's like I would say a promotional video. Maybe it was, they're singing This Boy, and they're also doing I Want to Hold Your Hand, and there's the sign on the back, the Daily Echo. It says that it's black and white, and they look completely pasted over. That one didn't look good. Yeah. And a couple of other ones here and there, but most of them I was okay with, honestly. I can see how some don't like the Now and Then video because it's whimsical and silly, which doesn't quite fit with the sentimental quality of the song itself. I can see where some people might feel that about it. Personally, I thought that was part of the emotional touch, how we got touched emotionally by it, the fact that they loved each other, they were having a good time all the time together. I kind of liked it. You can't do Disney. I don't know. It's funny because with Disney, if you look at some really old videos of mine, before it was ever revealed that they were going with Disney, I remember I said there's something going out here, even with the Love album, way back when the Love came out. I think it was 2007, or something around there, the early 2000s, whatever, 2000s. When the Love album came out, I remember saying, it looks like they're trying to Disneyfy the Beatles. They're trying to take they're making everything's love, 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 love. Now, look, the Beatles, a lot of their songs were about love, and Paul McCartney himself always said that one of the things he's proudest of and happy about is that the songs, a lot of them were about love. However, the Beatles, they took all the backbone out of them. They were trying to take, all the Your Blues and, Helter Skelter, Run for Your Life. And, for a long time, I had felt they were trying to Disneyfy and make them too sugary and sappy, the Beatles, and take all the balls out of them, like Revolution, the fast version of Revolution and all this. And that was before they went with Disney. They wound up going with Disney, and they did indeed become Disneyfied. Okay. I see here, Mayo, you're a rich man too. Thank you very much. I appreciate this. Thank you very much for your support, Daniel, as always. I appreciate that super chat. Thank you. Let's see. I never really answer this question because I don't want to leave anybody out. There are a lot of very fine channels out there. Is all I'm going to say. There are a lot of very fine Beatle channels out there. I could easily name my personal friends, the best, but I don't want to leave anybody out or play favorites or anything. That's all I could say about that. Okay, hello. What's going on, Chris McGovern? I love that they spent more time profiling the albums in the new edits. Yeah, that's another thing that I didn't even think of. Thank you for bringing that up. That's another thing. Everybody, the original. They didn't do that for every album. They profiled the albums a lot better with the album covers. I don't think they did that. I don't remember them doing that as acutely for every album in the original anthology. Getting back to Real Love, the 96 version is a George answer back after No Need to Be Afraid. And in the 2025 version, it's gone. That's what I'm referring to. I have to confess, as much as I know Beatles songs, I know every Beatles song like the back of my hand. However, when it comes to Real Love, I don't know it as well. I can't really. I had to play the 96 version back after the 2025 version to hear George's stuff. Now that's not there anymore. When George plays an answer back, so No Need to Be Afraid. Yeah, I like that way. DJ Reed, hello. Thank you for your in-depth program. Thank you very much. It's a lot of work. This is when it comes to the Beatles. When there's a new release like this, a big newsworthy release, this is when it's busy. I'm lucky I'm retired. If I was working still and had my job, I wouldn't be able to spend all this time. So I'm glad I'm retired. It gives me some time to do this. But it's a lot of work. And these are the very, very, very important times. This is when you get a lot of viewers, a lot of views, a lot of new subscribers, is when there's something big like this that comes out. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the moment Peter Jackson said that the Disney executive told him there would be, quote, no demand for extra Beatles footage on the Blu-ray, I knew that Disney is wrong for the Beatles. Disney is wrong for the Beatles. I like the idea that because it's Disney, some young people, young kids might get to experience the Beatles where they didn't before. But making like the Beatles like Walt Disney, I don't know. I mean, it's good in one sense, Going back to the Paul remarks, I think that Lila was talking about that's George's sense of humor. Exactly. Okay, that's it. I asked Jack Douglas if anything will change when Sean takes over for Yoko, and he said everything will change. Okay. I would like more information on what they did in early 66 before Revolver. That is rarely covered. Well, when you talk about Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane, yes, I love that version of Baby You're a Rich Man that we now get on Anthology 4. Are we going to get Carnival of Light in the future? Everybody wants it. The few people in the biz who have heard it say it's terrible. I think Mark Lewison was one of them. I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure. And he said it's so bad it makes Revolution 9 sound good. Now I know if you're a completist, we want to hear everything the Beatles did. I'm gonna be sacrilegious here. I'm gonna speak blasphemy. I don't care if we never hear Carnival of Light. Okay, if we get it, fine. If we don't, I'm fine with it too. It appears that Carnival of Light is not any great work that anyone would want to hear over and over, but I believe that we should, I guess, have it all kind of thing. Astonishingly, the Love album came out on November 17th, 2006. Wow. Solid gold to make you feel old. Yeah. Daniel, make me a rich man too, please. Anybody else want to help me help? I appreciate it. They were touring and recording Revolver as of April 66. Oh, okay, Mark. Well, thank you. I always appreciate your contribution. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, Ramoga is helping out a little bit too. Thank you, Ramoga. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Something got cut off here. Is it possible to dream with an Anthology 5 in a few years? Yeah, it's possible. Sure. I believe it's possible. Are we going to get it? I don't know. Oh, I don't remember this. Didn't John object to the band being displayed as the vultures in the Jungle Book? I don't really recall that. Yes, I mentioned this earlier. Yeah, none of them remembers that they played 2 times in Chase Stadium, not just once. There is a great book, Beatles 66, The Revolutionary Year, which goes into details about every month from December 65 to December of 66. Well, I haven't heard it yet, but from what I've heard, they've told us it's crap. Who have heard it, but I'll trust them on it. Yeah, this is another thing a lot of people complain about why did George's line get changed on the new Free as a Bird originally in the 1995 when he sang whatever happened to the life we once knew, now it's changed to the love that we once knew. Now the only thing I can think is and it's been a long time since I heard that. Wasn't it true that originally Paul and George both sang the same line? Didn't they both say the life we once knew? This time, isn't it the case that I think Paul sings one line and George, they wanted him to sing a different line, because I like it better that way. I'll be honest with you. I like the 2025 version better. And I do, if they each sing something different, each one gets a different line, I think that's a better effect than both of them singing the same line. George married in January 66, and we don't know much until they start, recording Revolver in April 66. I said earlier, now, again, when you do these live streams, it's easy to get things mixed up. Of course, December 66 is when they were doing, starting out with Christmas time and stuff, Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane. You got to understand, you're going through here, you're getting, how many comments have I gotten here? I got, 167 people watching, tons of comments. Things get jumbled in your head. I hope that Anthology 5 is not the excuse for not wishing the Rubber Soul box. You're going to get Rubber Soul, Eric. Please, all you people out there, you're going to get Rubber Soul. I'm guaranteeing you that when it comes, everybody's going to just avoid it, not say nothing about it. We got it. Okay, we're done. I'll bet you anything. I have to wind this down, please. I have to soon. So I'm going to have to do that. Exactly. Mono or stereo, I answer this the same way every time. It depends on the album and it depends on the song. Certain songs I like better, early songs I like better in mono. Like Please Please Me, the song. I prefer it in mono because the mono version, John doesn't make a mistake. In the stereo version, he makes a mistake. It depends on what song it is. I prefer the Beatles' White Album in stereo. I prefer Sgt. Pepper in stereo, which is also blasphemy to some people. No, I think the complete Beatles is really poor compared to the anthology. And from what I understand, I think Paul McCartney bought up the rights to the complete Beatles, so they can't show it, I think. Favorite songs from Anthology 5 remain to be heard. Yes, well, I'm familiar with their big songs. I like some squeeze songs. All right, I'm going to start winding this down, folks. It's gone a little longer. Well, I want to thank everybody for being here. We'll do this again. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe to my channel. I'm going to do more, Beatles stuff like this. I'm here every Saturday, by the way, for those of you here that don't know that. I do a live stream every Saturday where we can talk about anything, not just Beatles, but we can talk Beatles too, all day, all night, a couple hours if you want. So do that. But also, I have a couple of other channels I just want to promote before I go. First of all, if you're interested in movies and television and nostalgia, comic books, pop culture, collecting autographs, all kinds of fun stuff to do with entertainment, I have another channel called Mr. Cinemeo, and that's it down there. You can see it. Mr. Cinemeo. Please subscribe to Mr. Cinemeo. That's one of my other channels. The other channel that I have, I just put a name back that I used to use. This other channel is a channel about life, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Things, we all have challenges. Life is a challenge. It's about retirement. It's about life in general. It's about ups and downs. It's about trying to stay healthy, trying to make the most of life. Anything that's in here that I want to talk about regarding to life. And that channel is, if I can find it, I don't know why this is not working. Hold on. I can't scroll. It's called Save. There it is. It's called Mayo Loves Mondays. That's right. I went back to that title from my channel. Why do I call it Mayo Loves Mondays? Because it's a catchy title. It's clever. If I do say so myself. And it's because I now prefer Mondays because since I'm retired, I prefer a calmer week. Monday to Friday is much calmer. All the kids are in school, all the people are in work, the cars are off the roads. It's a lot more relaxing. Now weekends are very hectic, right? They're very, very hectic weekends. I just put a new video up there, which is kind of fun. You can see it for yourself. Mayo Loves Mondays, and I do live streams on that too. But the live streams over there are not Beatles-centric. Live streams over there are talking about life and, trying to shed a few pounds and trying to do all this other stuff in life and get by. So I thank you all again. Really appreciate it. I'll just look one more moment here to see any other comments. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, I appreciate all your kind words. Love to all of you. Take it easy, but take it.